What's up, guys? Welcome to Bleav in Rams, part of the Bleav Network. Erin Coscarelli back with you. Be sure to subscribe, comment, rate, follow this podcast. You can also catch us on Bleav TV. Follow us on all the socials. All right, we have a really good interview today. I'm so excited to speak with Lindsey Pallares. She is the 49ers team reporter. First and foremost, you just got here in LA. How are we doing today?
It's been good. I'm really excited. First NFC West matchup of the year for the 49ers. This is one that the faithful fan base always circles on their calendar. I think I saw a Vivid Seats stat of like 63% Niners fans. This is always a lot of fun. SoFi Stadium, obviously a state-of-the-art facility. This is one that I always look forward to. There's a lot of red that I can expect in that stadium.
Yeah, a lot of red. People circle this matchup each and every season because it says so much about the teams. Obviously, the rivalries between the coach, rivalry between the quarterbacks. There's a lot to get to, but I think the biggest storylines for both teams right now are they're so banged up so early on in the season, and both teams coming off pretty devastating losses. Before we talk about the run game, I want to talk about Brock Purdy. How have you had to see him so far adjust to all of these changes in terms of offensive weapons not at his disposal right now?
Yeah, I think there's always a lot of talk about the weapons around Brock Purdy. Very talented quarterback. I think for the Niners right now, it is a very next man up mentality, right? You had Christian McCaffrey go on IR very early in the season. He won't be available. Then you've got Deebo Samuel dealing with that calf strain. George Kittle likely entering this matchup as questionable with a hamstring, but it really has been next man up. I think the best example of that, and I know we're probably going to dive into Jordan Mason, but that's someone that was called upon week one, and it's like, all right, it's your time to shine. Definitely rose to the occasion. I think I saw that he's second in the league in rushing yards right now, 247 on the ground over 2 weeks. And that's really the expectation of the weapons surrounding Brock Purdy. If George Kittle can't go, it'll be Eric Saubert, who has been in the league since 2017. Jake Tondres, he is a Bay Area native, spent a whole season on the practice squad last season, so could be his turn, get his number called. Then you've got the rookie Jacob Cowing, again, a wide receiver out of Arizona that might, get some more reps in this one. So it really is I've heard a lot of people say it, an embarrassment of riches for the 49ers. And right now that they are taking some early bumps and bruises. And like you said, banged up in week 3. I can't believe so early in the season. It really is about looking to the other weapons that you've got on the roster and, down the depth chart.
Yeah, and if there's a guy that can overcome, obviously it's Kyle Shanahan. He's done it before. He'll do it again. But I want to not let you off the hook about Christian McCaffrey, because what's really interesting was Sports Illustrated just ran an article, I want to say today, about how the 49ers, quote unquote, mismanaged Christian McCaffrey. And part of that is because him being out, at least 4 games, possibly more. He's nursing an Achilles tendonitis injury, correct? And I think a lot of people were expecting during training camp to see him, like, guaranteed he was going to play week 1. And a lot of question marks with the Rams and their offensive line and all the injuries that they're dealing with. But being that I think so many people are surprised to see McCaffrey out for as long as he's going to be out, I know you can't necessarily agree with that article, but did somehow, some way, the Niners mismanage this running back situation with McCaffrey?
I haven't read the article, so I can't really speak to anything in that article. What I do know is that Christian McCaffrey is a guy that, if he is available to play, wants to be out there. He is someone that, we've heard it time and time again. He said it, Kyle Shanahan has said it, just obsessive about this game, takes really good care of his body as best he can. He is the reigning NFL Offensive Player of the Year for a reason. I think the workload that is on his plate is what the coaching staff and he have agreed to. So I can't really speak on it. I know that he wants to be out there for every snap that he can. Obviously, right now with the Achilles tendonitis, he's on IR. So he will not be back until at the very least October 10th. And we haven't gotten any other updates on him. So that's really all I can speak on at this point.
Yeah. Right. And he's as tough as it gets. So the guy wants to play during training camp, during practice. And if that re-aggravates an injury, I mean, that's just the game of football. You guys have a week 9 bye. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So obviously him going on IR means he misses 4 games, not necessarily 4 weeks. And you haven't had any updates, any anticipation of when people can see him back playing?
No, I mean, the one thing I can say is I know that Christian McCaffrey is going to do everything in his power to be back as soon as possible. As of right now, no updates. I think October 10th, so that would be that week 6 matchup, is the earliest that he could be back. I'm assuming any sort of timeline recovery updates that we'll get on Christian McCaffrey are going to make national headlines, but none of them have come just yet.
Yeah. Right. And, the Rams are feeling it too with Puka now on IR, Cooper Kupp missing an extended period of time. We don't know how long he's going to be out of the game. And you're also potentially, like you said earlier, what is George Kittle going to be a game time decision? What is the likelihood or the percentage you could see him play on Sunday?
Couldn't put a percentage on it because I don't know exactly the severity. We do know that it is a hamstring injury and it was enough to keep him out of Thursday's practice. We're going to get that final injury report later this afternoon. I think my understanding is that he will enter the weekend as questionable. Not necessarily sure if that entails a game time decision, but I do think his availability is not certain for week 3 against the Rams. Obviously not something that any team wants to see, and he had such a great outing in week 2. I think he caught nearly every pass thrown his way and had, I think it was 76 receiving yards and a touchdown. So, and obviously we know he just plays such a huge part in the blocking aspect of the 49ers offense. So obviously going to be a hit if he isn't available, but for now we're in kind of wait and see mode.
Yep. Yeah, and you talk about next man up mentality. The good news is, like you said, Jordan Mason has certainly made, I'm sure, Niners brass very happy. He's rushed for at least 100 yards and a touchdown in each of the first 2 games of the regular season. Certainly something the Niners are very happy about. How do you see his game evolving throughout the season while McCaffrey is out?
Yeah, I think having the opportunity to take the lion's share of the reps is only going to make him better. One of my, off-season training, I think, was a huge thing for him. One of the, my favorite stories that came out of training camp was that Jordan Mason actually really wanted to become a weapon in the pass catching game. He bought a jugs machine and was training all throughout the summer. Certainly something that he's added to his skill set and continued to improve. But like you said, we've seen him rush for over 100 yards in past 2 games. And I think that makes everyone kind of breathe this lovely sigh of relief because it's you have your next man up. He's on the roster. He's been ready, certainly risen to the occasion. And like you said, how to score in each game. So absolutely nothing to be upset about in terms of the 49ers ground game and continuing on until Christian McCaffrey is able to come back.
And I'm sure it gives Brock Purdy a nice sigh of relief knowing he has a guy like him to rely on in the backfield. Let's talk about defense for a moment because Nick Bosa, also a new addition to the injury list, limited in Wednesday's practice. Do you expect to see him play?
I did see him out. I Bleav I saw him out there at practice. I was kind of making my rounds, around the practice fields. Limited with a rib. Again, I'm going to refer to that injury report. I think we'll know better depending on his designation. I would anticipate that he would be out there, but again, I'm not Kyle Shanahan. We will see. He had 2 sacks against the Vikings. Certainly, obviously, your best defensive lineman that you've got out there. So you want to see him out there. But regardless, the 49ers really invested a lot of resources and brought in new talent to that defensive line. You've got Leonard Floyd, who spent time with the Rams, won a ring with the Rams. He's bookending that defensive line. Then you bring in Malik Collins on the interior. Javon Hargrave came last season. I think no matter what, that starting defensive line is going to be ready to go. Obviously, huge boost anytime Nick Bosa is there, and had 2 sacks coming off last week. So you kind of want to just keep that momentum building if you're the Niners.
Yeah. Speaking of momentum, Fred Warner, he recorded 9 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, okay, and an interception against the Vikings. How impactful is he for that defense, and where do you see his game evolving and growing as we see him play this season?
I don't think you can give enough compliments to Fred Warner. He's the quarterback of the defense, honestly, the gold standard for really any defensive player. He's referred to as all pro Fred in the building for a reason. He's certainly playing like it. I think his 3 forced fumbles over the last 2 games, I think not only an impact player because of the plays that he's obviously able to make on the field, but just the morale boost. He's always the pregame speech for the Niners out on the field. And it's really hard to not listen to him and not get fired up, right? So there's that extra juice that Fred Warner definitely brings in game before the game. Just absolutely a threat to any team. So I don't think you can say enough good things about Fred Warner. He just continues to get better and better. Last year, one of 3 unanimous All-Pros in the league. And I don't think, obviously, those honors can be taken very lightly. He is starting off 2024 on a very high note.
He is on a tear. The man is on a tear, and Stafford should be afraid right now because our offensive line for the Rams is pretty decimated. The big story, I think, for LA, much like the Niners right now, is they're banged up, but more so on the offensive line. And you've had to see Sean McVay and Stafford have to adjust to that, sort of getting the ball out early, trying to figure out how to rely on the run game. How do you see the Niners, Fred Warner and company exploiting a quarterback that's elite as it gets, but right now he's got a banged up offensive line protecting him?
Yeah, I think this is certainly an area that the 49ers are going to look to capitalize. I think, obviously Nick Bosa, not confirmed, but I think we can expect to see him out there. This is the time, right? I think Stafford got sacked 5 times because 3 starting offensive linemen were out last week. That's certainly something that the 49ers are going to target. And like I mentioned, there was just such a big investment on that defensive line specifically, but then you've got that front 7 with Fred Warner. He had a sack last week. It would be hard not to capitalize on that. And I think it's definitely something that you're gonna see in Sunday's game. But like you mentioned, it's a lot of different injuries on both sides of the ball. So I think, in terms of like where you can zero in on, both teams certainly have their areas that they can pick at because you've got players down on both sides.
Yeah. And when you say pick at, it's so true because I think both of these head coaches are legitimately the smartest guys in the league. If there are guys that can figure out ways to compensate for the holes and the voids, whether it's on offense or on defense, it's Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. How do you see this? And you've been with the Niners. Are you entering your 3rd season?
Yeah, this is my 3rd season.
Yeah.
I've been blessed with some NFC Championship runs, so it's been a nice 3 seasons.
Yeah. And it's nice to be able to have a guy like Kyle Shanahan. I remember when I covered the 49ers back in 2013, I had Jim Harbaugh. And also a brilliant mind, a football, genius. So it's really cool to have and see the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan sort of rivalry take place from your optics, from your perspective. Like, what's your take on that coaching rivalry?
I think the fact that they're from the same coaching tree is so awesome that you get to see this come to a head twice a year, guaranteed. And depending on how the seeding in the playoffs go, sometimes you get a bonus third matchup. But yeah, like you mentioned, it's just two incredibly gifted offensive minds that, I mean, someone asked Kyle Shanahan this week, like, with so many players down, does the playbook get smaller? And he was like, no, you just tailor it to what you have, essentially, right? You plug in the guys that you can get the most out of in certain places. The playbook doesn't get smaller. You just tweak it. And I think when you've got the roster that the 49ers have, it does obviously make it easier to do that, but also it wouldn't be possible without the offensive mind that Kyle Shanahan is. And then you look over on the other side on the Rams, you've got Sean McVay, who can absolutely do the same thing, came up in a very similar fashion. So I think it's just always a very fun chess match in the NFC West, I think is the best way to describe it.
It is. It's like these two chess masters. It is. It's really interesting. And it's almost more amazing when they have these sort of quote unquote deficits that they have to try to figure out how to maneuver. And it's been very interesting to watch. I mean, the fact that Rams took Detroit to overtime in Detroit really says a lot, being that, they lost Puka at halftime, and now you have to figure out how to navigate without Cooper Kupp and Puka out at the same time. I mean, people were so excited to be able to have both those guys on the field at the same time to see how dangerous that offense was going to be. And now without, some guys up front, it's just a bummer because they were playing at full speed and with such, elite talent all around on the offensive side of the ball. Rams fans are disappointed. However, again, if someone can figure it out, it's a guy like Sean McVay. Okay, I know you're running. I know you've got to run. A couple more questions. Who do you think will be the X factor in this game?
Oh, man. I think maybe position group, perhaps. And I think also a question mark with Charvarius Ward missing practice on Thursday. But we talk about areas where the 49ers can capitalize. The Rams are missing their two best offensive weapons. So this really might be the time that the 49ers secondary is able to snag some picks in LA, at least break up some would-be huge explosive plays. Charvarius Ward, obviously a really huge factor in that, had 5 interceptions last year, but you've got Diamador Lenore, you have Isaac Yiadom coming in from the Saints, who had a tremendous season last year and was a huge part in making sure the 49ers kept some possessions last week. Potential Talanoa Hufanga return in the deep backfield. So I think there is a really great opportunity for the 49ers secondary to capitalize on the Rams, who are probably going to be looking very heavily to Tutu Atwell and DeMarcus Robinson, to take a bulk of the pass catching responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. That was going to be one of my questions. So I'm glad that you just answered it. I was like, tell me how you see this going down with the Niners secondary, because I agree. There's going to be explosive plays, whether it's on defense or offense. It's going to happen. It is going to be a popcorn matchup for sure. Okay, you told me your X factor. I have to ask you the very hard question. Who do you think is going to end up winning?
Well, I mean, I'm going to pick the Niners every time. I have just seen this team find stars when you least expect it. I feel like they're no shortage of talent on this roster. I think this might be a great time for some of the free agent additions, some of the newer guys to really make a name for themselves. I'm going to pick the Niners every time. We'll see, depending on who's available, how close it is. But for whatever reason, these NFC West matchups, particularly with the Rams, always closer than you'd like them to be. Yeah. And it's usually just one game-changing play that really flips the game and gets somebody the dub. So I don't expect it to be a blowout by any means. I think it's going to be close.
Yeah, it'll be a nail biter for sure, one way or another. And I cannot wait to watch Lindsey Pallares with the 49ers. Good luck on Sunday. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you are super busy right now. Go enjoy some time maybe with the fam. And I hope I get to talk to you again soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Lindsey.